All right. Hi, Carol, and hi, everyone else. Welcome back to the Black Robe podcast. We are still on our COVID quarantine edition. So bear with us here as we meet virtually. All right, this is episode 8, yeah? We are back at it. Today we have some juicy topics. Okay, we have Mr. James Bible, who is the family attorney of Manuel Ellis, coming on our show today to discuss the things that the family has been working on, right? And Carol, what's going to be our second topic today?
Oh my goodness, I'm not one to gossip.
We know by now, Carol, we don't gossip. We just come with facts, okay? It's all facts on the Black Robe podcast.
Yes, it is, and unfortunately, the Pierce County Council has managed to do something even more scandalous than ever. And we'll talk about their attempt to take over the Tacoma Pierce County Health Department with a secret resolution that they passed in a hurry just hours ago, yesterday, I suppose, by the time people hear this. So we have to talk about it and look at what they're doing through a Black lens.
We sure do. But before we dive into that hot Black tea, right? Let's bring our highlighted guest on today, Mr. James Bible. Oh, we want to.
Yes, I'm excited about having James with us. We've been wanting to get him on. Hello, James.
Well, hello.
Look at you always working.
I know.
This is correct. Every moment, every minute, as much as we can.
He looks like a lawyer to me. What do you think?
Sure does. Yeah, he wouldn't be a lawyer if he didn't have his degree in the background right there. You know, I think that's the seal right there.
Yes, and the lawyer books. What is that? Anzhane or whatever those blue books
Washington Digest, Washington Practice below, a little more Washington Digest to the side. Everything to make people excited about the law.
Of course. Of course. Well, James, tell our audience that might not be from Washington who Manny Ellis was and why he is such a huge topic of discussion in Pierce and King County.
Manuel Ellis is a name that is now heard from shore to shore throughout this country. It's a heartbreaking moment in time. It's heartbreaking because he was on his way to doing so much more. He had gotten back into his church. He was a regular band member in his church. He was so close to his family. He was picking up his little nephews and nieces for school. He was on their list to care for them when needed. His mother consistently recounts how often he would help her, like mow the lawn and do all these things. So Manuel Ellis is a person that loved his family and loved his community. On March 3rd, 2020, just this year, he had finished the night at church. He had talked to his mom on the telephone, and he decided to take a walk to his local 7-Eleven. He bought his snacks, and as he was headed back home, officers pulled up. For whatever reason, they beckoned him over to the car. At some point, they hit him with the door, jumped out of the car. One started punching and hitting him. He eventually was choked while another person was actually tasing him. They then put a spit mask over his head as he was saying, "I can't breathe, sir." He died. The medical examiner, for whatever reason, well over a month later, the report was released in relation to the determination of death, which was homicide. Homicide is the killing of another human being by a human being. And it's important to understand that within all of this, and why this case becomes so big, is that the powers that be did everything they could to hide information in this particular case. Everything they could. The Pierce County Sheriff ultimately was in a spot where their spokesperson, who is now the sheriff overall, was saying that Manny Ellis was trying to break into cars. That eventually was debunked. Was saying that he came up and hit the police officer's car. That was eventually debunked. Was saying that, well, he attacked the officers and the officers were in some sort of life or death struggle. That was completely debunked. They actually brought these officers, the Tacoma Police Department, brought these officers back from administrative leave and claimed that their investigation was done just before my office was retained to address these issues.
Wow.
And what we learned in 3 or 4 days of active, actual investigation that frankly should have been done by Pierce County, what we learned was that there were actually 3 separate witnesses in this case. 3 civilians that clearly say that Manuel Ellis was doing nothing wrong on that particular day. He was just walking. It looked like he was called over by the police. It looked like he was having a friendly conversation when he was hit with that door, thrown to the ground, choked, and tased at the same time, and lost his life. But the interesting thing about all of this is with those 3 independent witnesses, we also have 3 separate angles of video and audio. And the video that we have makes it even clearer that Manuel Ellis had done nothing wrong on that particular day, that he was in fact beaten by these police officers, that he was in fact choked by these police officers, that he was in fact tased by these police officers, and even more heartbreaking, the Ring video captured his final words. Wow. And his final words weren't just, "I can't breathe." They were, "I can't breathe, sir." A sign of absolute respect to those that were actually seeking to degrade his body. Respect for the authority of the badge that ultimately killed him. And when we look at cases like this across this country, I have to say, frankly, this deserves prosecution. The city of Tacoma has failed the Ellis family because these officers are still getting paid. They have absolutely failed. The city manager in Tacoma has failed this family. Every city council member in Tacoma has failed this family. The group that was supposed to do the independent investigation initially, Pierce County, has absolutely failed this family. And in failing this family, they did damage. They did damage to our community trust. They did damage to the Constitution of the United States of America and of Washington State. They created an environment where ultimately we can't have faith in what they claim. They have consistently killed human beings in Tacoma and Pierce County, and it's time for accountability to be what we have, to be what we actually employ in Pierce County and Tacoma. So Manuel Ellis is a heartbreaking story that will lead to transformative justice because his family and those that care about him are going to make it so.
So thank you, James. And you're right. It is a heartbreaking story. And it's my perception, and I wonder how you feel about it, whether you believe that it was partly because of the worldwide uprising and upheaval that happened in the wake of the deaths of Breonna Taylor and George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery, that because the world was starting to see what had always been hidden from view, when Manny Ellis's case came to light, I think my sense is that all of that worldwide upheaval helped this to rise to view, because you and I know there have been many instances of African-American men dying in police custody. So do you think the world looking in has helped make this much more apparent? The issues of police brutality, the use of the chokeholds, the use of spit masks. Do you think what was happening in the world is helping your case?
Ultimately, what I think is this. You are absolutely correct in that this is not the first time that this sort of thing has occurred in this world and in this country. I was commenting to somebody probably about 2 weeks before George Floyd, that on a Tuesday, I had already before noon talked to 5 or 6 different families who had loved ones killed by police officers in the Pacific Northwest, just the Pacific Northwest. So it's not something that is unusual. What I will say is this, in reference to George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and so many more. The reality is that we were in a space where typically people look at the morning news, they see some sort of horrible event happen to a Black body, a Black person, and they finish their cereal, drink their coffee, and then they run off to work and they start focusing on other things. But the events of May, when we were all on lockdown, where many of us weren't working at all, were left to sit and think about what we really just saw. And I feel like some populations said, is this really real? Is this really what's happening? Is this actually what's going on? This is just wrong, and we can't justify it. And there aren't things to distract us. And the hoop players aren't, the NBA players aren't playing ball right now. And the NFL isn't going on. And you know, all these other things aren't happening. So we can't start thinking about something else. And I think that that's part of what led to all of this reflection. And with Manny, I think about how the city of Tacoma released a statement, and they released a statement saying they were not Minnesota, that those actions were deplorable, that they were wrong, that they were bad, all those sorts of things. But we're not Minnesota. And that as they were saying that, they had Manny Ellis. And they thought they had Manny Ellis buried deep and silenced. I was actually in the hospital when I first started receiving calls in relation to Manny's case. I've been there for 3 or 4 days, and I was not feeling very well. And that's actually from a hospital bed where I first saw the George Floyd video, the Breonna Taylor incident, the bird watcher incident as well. You go down the line, and I was like, what's going on here? I got to get healthy. I got to get out there. I got to get busy. And I promised the family of Manuel Ellis and the loved ones, because he had other friends calling me too, that as soon as I was out of this hospital, I will pay attention to this case, and we'll get together and we'll investigate it, and we'll try to find the truth. And what we found was shocking.
Yeah. Well, we really do appreciate your commitment. And when I say commitment to all of the viewers that are sharing from my page, I'm telling you, I saw James Bible on Instagram, on Facebook. He was marching. He had the Black Lives Matter mask on, COVID or not. Like, you were in the streets.
Oh, it's time to get down.
That's how you was getting down with the people, with the community, with the family. I mean, I'm sure you probably invited to dinner, on Sundays with the Ellis family. I mean, just tell us a little bit about how this this case has kind of connected you with the family. Do you feel like because you are so closely connected that you have more compassion, that this is actually personally impacting your life, your family's life? Can we talk a little bit about the emotional, trauma and stress that's behind this, right? In your position.
There's always emotional trauma and stress behind all of these. The reality is, when I look at Manuel Ellis, I look at my 7-year-old son who's in 2nd grade right now.
He's so cute. Oh, he is.
Well, thank you, ma'am. I think so too. But I spend the start of my day, as long as we're in virtual school, involves the first 4 hours teaching him, right, side by side. And I think about his eyes and his smile, and I think about exactly that, how cute he is. And then I start to get worried about what he looks like to people when he's 13, when he's 16, when he's 17, when he's a little bit bigger, so I think about Manny, and I think about how we got to do something now to help people see us as human, to see all people as human, to be in a space where folks are more hesitant to use that sort of deadly force against people. And I think that's a reality. And yes, when you walk through a horrific moment like this with a family, they become your family too. You become a part of them. They become a part of you. You sometimes hear their cries in the middle of the night. You sometimes pay attention to when they've stayed so strong the entire day. They've been professional in front of a microphone. They've answered all those questions, and then they're just broken at the end.
So James, one of the things that you did, besides your Black Lives Matters mask and marching and standing in solidarity with the Ellis family and others is the family has agreed to now be part of an initiative 1300. Tell us about how that happened and exactly what is it the family's trying to achieve now through this legislation.
So Initiative 1300 is now known as the Manuel Ellis Washington Anti-Discrimination Act. And if you type online Manuel Ellis Washington Anti-Discrimination Act, you'll get information pertaining to why we move forward in this particular way. The family wanted to move to a place where they were no longer just heartbroken and seeking just justice for themselves, but to a place where they're actually able to help others to avoid these sorts of tragic circumstances, to be in a place where there's actual accountability for the actions of officers, to be in a place where we focus not just on a single incident or one area of institutional inequity, but civil and human rights in general. And I would say that this I-1300, the Manuel Ellis Washington Anti-Discrimination Act, is actually an equality and human rights act. And when this was brought to the family, they reviewed it, they looked at it, they thought about the chokeholds and how it would ban chokeholds essentially in Washington state and how important that would be, especially for those that have been in that place where they've seen the I can't breathe videos that are repeated themes throughout this country. And then they looked at the other things that have caused inequities in our society that also lead to institutional mistreatment, healthcare issues, which is what part of what the Manuel Ellis Washington Anti-Discrimination Act addresses in terms of vaccines and equity, which will be very important soon, because we can't ignore and we can't afford to ignore that people of color throughout the state of Washington are disproportionately impacted by COVID. And many don't have the resources to get the medication that they so badly need or the treatment that they so badly need. So we pay attention to those sorts of issues. Employment opportunities, educational opportunities, those are all critical to leveling the playing field, which is why I call it an equality bill. And when you look back at some of the tragic instances in Manuel Ellis's life, we wanted to focus on other things that would have helped him along the way too, and people that were in his space.
Very good. I know you need a lot of signatures, and you're not standing on the corner with your pad recording how many you have already. But if people are interested in signing on, how do they do it in the wake of COVID-19?
Well, this is a crazy time in which to be incredibly ambitious, and that is what we are, is incredibly ambitious, and we won't back away from that. At this stage, what we have are signature gatherers at a variety of Walmarts throughout the state. I'm told that we're also out at the Tacoma Mall, and that we're at a couple of other malls as well. We're seeking to create groups that can work hard to get signatures for other people. There are ways to go online and find us and then figure out how to get a signature or get a ballot, a sheet, so that you can help collect signatures on your own. We'd be happy to send them to people. And there's a lot of volunteers out there as well. So
at some point, we've got to get into the digital system, right? And stop doing it by paper, right?
Well, the crazy thing is we were at the digital section, and not only were we at the digital, we actually had the requisite number, but the Secretary of State did not accept those digital signatures. While there's some debate about whether or not they should be accepted, because frankly, the law only says a signature, and they were in fact signatures, a decision will be made by a court after the legislative session has started. So what we're doing right now is we're working hard to just double up. You know how sometimes some of us are told that we have to be twice as good?
Well,
some of us, all of us.
Ready to be twice as good.
Yeah.
Is what I would say, absolutely. So that's part of what we're doing. So we're in courtrooms, and we're also, once again, out there on street corners trying to get people to sign because we know that justice needs to be achieved. It is important to add, if I might, really important to add that those marches, they were so important. The hundreds of thousands of people nationwide that were in the streets of critical importance, those people that came together to demand justice, all of that was of critical importance. But we are now at the most critical phase because our legislative sessions are coming into action. And in Washington State, if you care about Black Lives Matter, you will be at the state legislature in the thousands. You will be there in the same way that you were down in Seattle at CHOP. If you were at CHOP, set it up in Olympia. Do what you need to do, but make sure that human rights rule the day. And that's what really matters here, because they all expected us to get tired. They thought it was gonna get rainy, wet, and cold. And we need to remind everybody that we're from the Pacific Northwest and we're used to this.
Right.
We walk through this with sandals and without an umbrella. We're used to the rain. We're used to the wind. We're ready to roll, and let's prove that. Let's do it.
Just put your hat on and get on out there, your boots. And I know Anzhane probably has another closing question. James, we so appreciate you for giving us the time out of your incredibly busy schedule. I just want to say I don't feel no ways tired, and I've come too far to turn back now. And there's some folks who know that song.
Yes, we do.
So I just want to say thank you so very much. Anzhane, you want to wrap up, and then we'll let James get back to the Manuel Ellis case.
Absolutely. Thank you, James. For our viewers, is there a deadline that we need to get these signatures so we can bombard the Walmarts and Targets and the Tacoma malls? What's the deadline? When do we need these signatures by?
Well, I'm hopeful that we'll get them all before Christmas Eve. And then after that, we'll tell you maybe a couple more days, but we need to get them all in before Christmas Eve. That's what I would say. We got to do everything we can to push that number.
Well, the IBJ supports you, supports the Manuel Ellis family. We are continuously praying for you and the family in the case. And we hope to stay in communication as this case progresses and then the initiative progresses.
Thank you so much.
Alrighty.
Thank you,
Thank
James.
you. Bye, James.
See you later. Take care.
Woo, that was as good as I expected it to be.
That was good. Oh my gosh, I love how just natural Mr. Bible is, you know, and you could just feel the energy and his commitment. I mean, this is more than just any case, right? This is like he said, we're transforming the justice system right now. We're holding people accountable. We're providing checks and balances. That's everything that the legitimacy of this democracy is built off of, right?
Yes, and
So,
you were talking a little bit as we were prepping for this about the importance of people understanding that this is part of the next steps of justice system transformation. Why don't you talk a little bit about that journey from protest to legislation and how that's part of what people should be working on next?
Absolutely. So when we think of mobilization, and I'm going to make this in the lamest terms just so that we can all be on the same page here, right? When we think about mobilization, we really got to think about it as a journey. It's not, as we saw with all of the momentum from our public protests over the summer, right? That itself, that extended for months. I mean, man, we were really marching every day. You know, it was like we were marching around Jerusalem. we were marching for these causes.
Jericho walls.
Oh, excuse me.
Yes, indeed.
But
until those walls come tumbling down.
Exactly. But that's not the end. And so what Mr. Bible is doing now, he's continuing the mobilization to the state level through this initiative, right? And if the initiative doesn't pass, whether it's because we didn't get enough signatures or because we didn't get it passed through the House or the Senate, you know, we're not going to stop. As Mr. Bible, you know, kind of insinuated, we are resilient people. We are, you know, Black people, we don't give up. We know life ain't been no crystal stair, right, Carol?
Right, it's got splinters in it.
Exactly. So we keep it pushing. And with that movement forward, if we don't get this passed, then I think the next phase on this mobilization continuum is to kick people out of office, right? Let's advocate for better, more representation for the community, because right, it's obvious that the community needs police accountability. It's obvious.
Yes,
That's
we'll
what
be
this whole
we'll be paying close attention to the progression of this piece of legislation. It's pretty comprehensive. It has a lot of goodness in it. And that usually means that in order to get it passed, there will be lots of cuts and, places where language is amended along the way, and then getting it through the House and the Senate and all the way through to passage is a journey. But as James said, now is the time to take that energy we saw during the summer to follow this and other bills around police conduct all the way through to the end. And there are some other bills out there, so we'll keep our eye on those. But in these last few minutes, we are also keeping our eye on the Pierce County Council.
And
do you want to start
with a disclaimer? Yeah, can I just start with a disclaimer that, we're not hating on the Pierce County Council. I know that for our viewers that have been regularly excuse me, watching our episodes, we've been talking a lot about the Pierce County Council and what they're doing horribly and how it's so unjust, but it's simply true. I mean, we're just coming to you guys with the facts. Okay, we're coming to you guys. This is information that is recorded, right, from the Pierce County Council. I mean, I'm just astonished. I wish that we didn't even have to report on such negative, actions from the council, but it's unfortunately we do. So let's add one to the list, shall we?
Let's add one to the list. And I think the word of the day that I want to associate with this latest action is scandalous.
Scandalous. Oh, y'all so scandalous.
Scandalous. And so let me read the response that came from the Tacoma Pierce County Health Department earlier today to an effort by our own Pierce County Council, sponsored by Councilmember Pam Roach, to frankly, to put it in common terms, to take over the Tacoma Pierce County Health Department. They passed a resolution through yesterday quickly, quietly. It wasn't even on the county's website. You wouldn't even have known it was going to be heard if you hadn't been watching the meeting. And they're considering a resolution to terminate the interlocal agreement between the city of Tacoma and Pierce County that established their joint Tacoma Pierce County Health Department. And that joint entity has existed since 1972. Mm-hmm. The first hearing is on December 7th, and there is a planned final vote scheduled for December 15th. And everybody, I must have had 15 forwarded emails today saying, have you heard about this? Did you see the Tacoma News Tribune's article about it? And I did hear about it actually as it was happening, because there's some folks who are just on it, paying very close attention and watching carefully decisions like this that have a systemic implication. And why does IBJ care?
Because
why do we care?
Right. Well, we know that the Tacoma Pierce County Public Health Department, they support Black needs, right? Black health issues, right? Isn't there's a lot of what was the Black infants that they have? There's a program surrounding Black infants, but not even just Black issues, more social community orientated issues, right? Like the methadone clinics, more democratic social services that the Tacoma Pierce County Public Health Department offers. So you got to think, if one is to dissolve like this contract, are you not happy with the current social programs that they're offering to the community. And why so, when they've been serving the community since 1972?
Well, I'm not one to gossip,
You know?
but Dr. Anthony Chin is solid as a rock. He's very clear and very focused about the direction in which he wants to take the Tacoma Pierce County Health Department. And he is not easily pushed around. And so I think part of what you're seeing here is an all-out power struggle between the county exec's office and Dr. Chin. I'm just going to lay it out there. And I observed it personally myself, working inside. So I'm not speaking out of school. And I think there are programs, policies, and initiatives of the health department that don't line up well with a conservative agenda.
Yeah.
There are things we do that, you know, frankly, I had one council member tell me about individuals who have substance use disorders that we should just put them on a chain gang and have them work off their addictions that way. That's how backwards they think about these things. And the health department tends to be at the forefront of what is in the interest of the public as a whole, what is healthy for the community as a whole. And so they have to be nimble, they have to be innovative, they have to be able to try new things as, you know, the technology shifts, as medical information shifts. And aside from that, we are smack in the middle of COVID-19, trying to recover, trying to get a vaccine out, and you want to cause this huge distraction by trying to end the interlocal agreement, which would cause all sorts of upset in that system at a time when we need them to be very focused on COVID-19 vaccine distribution. That's why I use the word scandalous.
Very scandalous. It's clear that the county does not have the same interest as the community. And the only way that they're able to get away with this is because we haven't been paying attention, or we just keep on electing these guys. You know, we're not standing out, but the momentum is here, right, Carol? I got some faith. You know, I hope that there will be a redistribution of power amongst that council. Because
and ironically, you know, this was a last minute, we have weeks left in this year. Nobody at the city of Tacoma seemed to even know this was coming. What I've seen so far suggests that city of Tacoma leadership was as caught by surprise as the rest of the community. Catherine Ushka is the chair of the Board of Health. And so if the city didn't know, it means the Board of Health didn't even know this was coming. That's some scandalous stuff for Dameyer and Richardson to sit on that health board. I think maybe even Young, but to sit on the health board and not even mention the fact that they were thinking about dissolving the interlocal agreement to the city of Tacoma, who is their partner. That's their business partner. That would be like you and me going out in public to sever our relationship without ever talking to one another. It's outrageous. It's a sign that they're trying to get something done inside these next 2 or 3 weeks that they would not be able to get done after January, because they will have a Democratic majority in January. And there's some discussion about whether or not that new county council with a Democratic majority could undo this decision, but then Dameyer can veto whatever they decide to do, right?
Yeah.
So if the community does not show up in a big way and have their voices heard about this decision right now, you may be stuck with the health department as a department of the county executive. And this is just my guess. Doug Richardson's buddy, Ken Farmer, will be your new health department director. They brought him on to do recovery, COVID-19 economic recovery, whatever that is. He is a major sergeant or whatever his title is in the Army. He's an MD. And I'm guessing that because his time is probably up when the CARES Act money can't be spent anymore, they got to find something new for him to do to warrant his six-figure income. And my guess is that's who will head up the health department if it's put under the executive. And one more really funny thing, and then I know you got to respond to this.
I mean, I'm ready to take a pool out on this, like a bet. Like,
the funny thing is, if you go back and watch that meeting, the so-called sponsor, Council Member Roach, didn't even know she was sponsoring the doggone bill. So that tells you something. And I'm just speaking from my own experience inside the exec's office. The exec drafted that ordinance and then put her name on as a sponsor. She didn't even know she was sponsoring the bill until she got in the meeting and said, oh, by the way, can I add my name? Well, your name is already on it. So if she had actually drafted the legislation, wouldn't she already know that her name is on it? So that tells you there's some hanky-panky going on. And quite honestly, I don't think that she would knowingly put anything under the exec's office, because the entire time I was there, she hated him.
Wow.
Literally. There was no love there.
Yeah.
So why would she put any new authority, give him any new power or authority? There's no love there. So I just find that curious that the person who allegedly sponsored the legislation didn't even know she was a sponsor. Yeah. What are your thoughts about this?
We got some real scandals going on in the Pierce County Council. I mean, geez. It's like every week you guys are giving us our content. If any county council members watching this podcast, okay, do something positive for the community so that we can report back something, or say maybe there was some mix up, we actually aren't looking to push forward that, we don't want to dissolve the health department. Why would we do that? I mean,
the good news is they have to give notice, and I think it's a year, minimum of 6 months, but probably a year's notice. So it wouldn't take effect until 2022.
But the lasting effect that it will have on families, it will have on the community, it will have on people who live in poverty and have no other insurance option than public health, right? Medicaid, Obamacare, and so forth. So, communities show up December 7th. What is that? What day is that? Next
Monday.
Oh, Monday.
That's what I'm trying to tell you. They're rushing it through. The final vote is on December 15th, but they'll be discussing it on December 7th, and which means they're rushing it through, trying to get it done while they have a Republican majority on the council. And there seems to be no way to stop that freight train from getting to its destination. And I guess the outcry that I'm hearing about personally, and why we think it's so important, is because the sickest people in our community, the ones who have the least access to high quality medical care, the ones most impacted by COVID-19, those dying 20 years earlier than others in our county, need that health department to be nimble, to be able to respond quickly to changing circumstances. And I'm not convinced that having the health department as a department of the county executive is going to ensure that those populations are well taken care of. I stand corrected. If they're able to show me that that can happen, I will be the first to come on the Black Robe and say I was wrong about that. But knowing what I know about how the health department is run, and by the way, Anjane, I think it's curious that the health department just kicked off its racial equity initiative.
Right.
We just heard about it at the Poverty to Possibilities event.
Yep.
How excited they were about the work they're doing. And I think it was the September Board of Health meeting when Board Chair Ushka said, hey, all of us need to have DEI, racial equity training. And then a month or two later, the county says, oh, hell no, we are dissolving this thing. You expect us to take DEI
Well, I thought the county was already, I thought that was the only thing that they were asked to do is do DEI training. I thought that was their anti-racist approach.
Good for council member Ushka, who raised the issue and said, we all should go through this. Very proud of her, but I hope that this attempt to take over is not in response to her wanting an anti-racist board of health.
Yeah, I hope not either, but that's kind of what it's looking like. I mean, it's just, it wouldn't be too much of a coincidence, right? So that's it, guys. That's the fact. The Pierce County Council wants to dissolve their contract with Tacoma Health Department and put now the health department underneath the county council. So no room for accountability or checks and balances there. So
yeah, the county council would become the Board of Health. And to be fair, Council Member Roach had said that more than once. I heard her say it on multiple occasions that she felt that the county council should be the Board of Health, setting public health policy. And never mind the fact that I don't think there's a doctor among them.
What?
I'm sorry, but I don't want Jim McCune deciding how to treat my health.
Right. Why does it sound like Trump is advising our council or something? It's literally like everything he did. Oh, let's just do it. Worked out so great. No.
Who was it last night? I think it was Cuomo on CNN who said they have a new name now and it's called a Trumplican. And I think that's what we have going on here with this attempted takeover, but we better wrap it up because you know.
Yeah, we're over time now, but we hope you all enjoyed our episode. Got a lot of good information and updates as far as the Manuel Ellis case and the new Manuel Ellis I-1300 initiative that hopefully we can get signatures for and we can get it voted on in this upcoming session. I wonder if our session's gonna be, in person or virtual with COVID going on.
I don't think so. I think it's gonna be virtual.
So we got to figure out a way to make our presence known without showing up at the steps of Olympia, because if nobody's there, then that's just gonna be a waste of everybody's gas and energy. So we'll get back to you. I think that's some good things we can follow up on. See how we can get people engaged this upcoming session.
And do you want to talk just 5 seconds about your jingle competition before you close?
Yes, we are still doing our jingle contest. I know you guys see the little countdown that we've been using in the interim, but we really do want an intro and an outro. So anybody that's watching this podcast right now, if you know someone or you yourself are a musician and would like to create a 1 to 2 minute intro and outro for the Black Robe podcast, something that we can jazz to and open up and close out with, we have cash prizes. We have graphics. Everything is on our website, even how to entry and participate. So check us out on instituteforblackjustice.org. That's the Black Robe podcast for today, episode 8, closing out. Bye, guys. See you, Carol.